Thanks, everybody. So feel free to take a seat, grab your drinks, grab some food, and enjoy the show. So quick hello from my side. Yeah, we came here today to our dear colleagues from Applifting. We're the iOS team that develops George. And I just wanted to give a quick intro for anybody not familiar with the product or the platform. So George is the digital banking solution of Erste Group. And can we pull up the App Store page? Awesome. You might know it as a product from České spořitelny, but we're actually also building it for 6 different banks in the whole Central and Eastern Europe. And it's used by more than 8 million people at the moment. Exactly, so that would be the page for České spořitelny, but it's also used in Austria, Slovakia, Romania, and so on and so on. And yeah, it's a big project with a lot of people on it, but actually started 2014 as an Objective-C 2-man show and grew from there to around 20 people collaborating together on it, heavily modularized, using SwiftUI and internal frameworks. And yeah, we've learned quite a few things along that road, and some nice, some not so nice. So regarding SwiftUI, I will hand over to Maksym now, and he will tell you some more stories. Thank you.
Hello. Hi everyone, my name is Maksym, and today I will tell you a story of SwiftUI struggles in George. There will also be another story of positives of SwiftUI, because there are many obviously, but we will start with the negative because that's how you go. So about a year ago, we dropped iOS 12 and 13, which gave us a brilliant opportunity to try SwiftUI finally properly, because first version of SwiftUI is not very good. So that's us. And we were very excited. We were excited about faster development times, finally having previews, because yes, and having to write less UI code, and having fun. And also because our app used reactive Swift for a bunch of years, we saw that as a nice opportunity to start migration to Combine. Not all of these themes turned out to be true, so we were slightly disappointed in some themes, and I will tell you why. So first of all, preview didn't work that well with George modular architecture. They still take a while to build, about 1.5 minutes, which kind of doesn't work that well. And when after it's done building, when you change some stuff, it takes 5 to 10 seconds to reflect the change on the screen, which is not brilliant. And right when we started a year ago, first version of Xcode just couldn't handle our modular approach, so all of the previews pretty much crashed. And you had to be very lucky to have them working, or you could disable live update, which kind of defeats the purpose of the preview, which is not good. And next, there goes some just small annoyances and big annoyances that George and SwiftUI. So first of all, because we adopted SwiftUI from iOS 14, that doesn't support attributed streams, which is very stupid, in my opinion. It's a very basic feature, and it doesn't matter what is written here. It's just like to give the scale of what is required to support such a basic thing. But that's doable, that's rulable. A lot of people done that before. Another thing is that if you want to do a more complex layout, which requires you to calculate the size of some view and then use that number in other calculations and so on, you can use Geometry Reader, but it doesn't work very well in all layouts. Sometimes it just messes up all of your layouts. And to combat that, we had to write this extension, which basically puts Geometry Reader in the background and propagates the sides upwards. Again, it's not a huge annoyance. It's just something that is not well documented by Apple, and that you have to either find out by yourself or by going to some article and stuff like that. Next, these are the things that are very important to us. So in George, obviously, because so many people use it, some of them happen to be disabled, and they need accessibility features in order to just live their lives, use the banking app they want. And one of the accessibility features is dynamic type fonts. As it turns out, SwiftUI doesn't really respect dynamic fonts that well if you don't use the predefined styles. So you may know that SwiftUI has some styles like title, body, header, blah, blah, blah. But if you don't use those and you just want to specify some kind of size, it doesn't scale it at all. And to combat that, you again need to write some modifier, and then again you need to not forget to use it every time, which is frankly very annoying. Of course, it can be combated with a lint rule, but it's just something that a production-ready framework should have at all. But yeah, this is how we solved it. Accessibility this is a very niche use case, but still I think quite interesting. If you have a video somewhere in the app and you want a blind user to be able to know what video is about actually before they waste their time watching it, in UIKit you can go deep inside the AV player view controller structure and find the proper view, find the player layer, and apply an accessibility label to that to notify an impaired user about the contents of the video. It's not possible in SwiftUI player, and also SwiftUI player doesn't support picture-in-picture, which is again very weird. I don't understand the reason why it would be the case, but yeah, here we are. Next, also sometimes you want to use newer features of SwiftUI, or you want to some modifiers conditionally. I will show a bit later on a use case for stuff like this, but this is what you have to write to do that. And again, I think either Apple should provide those APIs that I will talk about in a more optional fashion, or something like this to get around this limitation. Accessibility part 3. You're probably getting tired of accessibility at this point. Accessibility, for example, in SwiftUI doesn't support optional values like it does in UIKit. So if you have some kind of default accessibility value, but you may want to override it with a value from backend or something like that, if you default to an empty string, because if that accessibility label from backend is optional, if you default to an empty string, you are messing up the intrinsic value you had before. And yeah, basically, if flat, it's not very beautiful, but that's how we do it. Next, very interesting annoyance is rounded corners. Some of you may be familiar with the fact that Apple has two types of rounded corners. One is just like regular, and another one is called continuous in iOS. This is just, names are strange, but this is the best illustration of it I could find. It's just like more rounded, nicer. And as it turns out, by default, corner radius modifier in SwiftUI uses the old rounded style. And in order for that to be not the case and to use a new continuous style, you either need to use a clip shape, or if you also want to use radius only on some, for example, only the two. Again, you need to write a special modifier to handle that, which is, in my opinion, quite strange, because what we strive for in UI in general is customizability, and that is not what Apple gives us here. And also, Apple doesn't push the new styles as they usually do. Now we come to the big annoyances. So SwiftUI doesn't have any kind of readable guide of any sort. So if you want to support an iPad layout like you did before, so as you can see here, we have this header. This table view should look like insert group style, but we have a bit of a messed up gamut collection. So If you want to just restrict it to a readable content guide, this doesn't exist in SwiftUI at all. I'm not sure if they plan to add it in general at all. But what you have to do is kind of ugly. So obviously we can't back out of support at this point. And what you have to do is to go through, because of what my colleague will tell you next, we are using a UI navigation controller with a bunch of controllers inside. So in our case, it was enough to go into the controller structure and find the top one and figure out the readable size on it, and then pass it to the view, the SwiftUI view, which is, again, something not, I think, I should do. And also, if I had a fully SwiftUI app, I wouldn't be able to do this either. So I'm not sure how do you get out of this problem in SwiftUI on the apps. But since George is a long-term project and we had a lot of UIKit code, obviously it has some UIKit in it. So this is a possible solution. But I'm not sure how Apple intends you to support an iPad layout. They clearly don't. Next, because we have a banking app, obviously we need current inputs of some kind always. And SwiftUI text field is quite limited. It doesn't allow us to do what we want to do. Basically, the requirement is quite simple. We want to format the input as user types while retaining the caret position. So you typed something and then you go to the middle of the input and you correct something. SwiftUI only gives you, here, this is the new string, and it doesn't tell you what changed specifically. And we tried a bunch of formatters that SwiftUI has. Some of them are iOS 15 only, some of them iOS 16 only, some of them available for the whole range of SwiftUI iOS versions. None of them worked as we expected, and the default callback didn't work either. So for now, we are sticking with the UI text field wrapper. Not a big deal again, but quite a bummer when you have to do stuff like this, when you want to adopt a new technology. Then we come to the lists. So the last part of this presentation is about the lists, which is every iOS app contains 90% lists. So if you want to do something as basic as a selection on a list, so if you have, for example, a navigation view with a navigation link in SwiftUI, you know what I'm talking about. If you want to have that nice selection effect, what you can do is you can wrap it into a button like some people suggest online, but that gives you this result on the right. So it will completely ignore your list row background. I exaggerated, obviously nobody uses red backgrounds, but the point I'm trying to make is that that is not a good solution. And so basically what we have to do again is very hacky. We need to pretend that we don't have any insets and then apply the insets ourselves again and then apply the background color and then apply the selection. So it's all manual process for something as simple as a selection animation on a list. And the final point is what we call a stripe view. So this is a component, a type of screen where you have a collapsible header with a table view underneath. And when you scroll, this header just collapses into a navigation bar. So the problem there is that we tried to implement it, and there are a few solutions online, and this is the first one we tried, where you have a scroll view. You have a scroll view, and you have a lazy v stack where you have your header, you have your content, and then you track in the coordinate space how the header moves. That worked sort of all right, but the problem with that is that lazy v stacks don't recycle views. So if you have a large list, like we might have in George, because we might want to migrate the transaction list at some point, performance just sucks. And so we started looking at the list, and that's the second implementation. And The second issue is that if we want to support the new insert group style, we would need to mimic that ourselves, basically, because lazy vstat is just nothing, and you have to provide the cells, and you need to do it all by your own. And if Apple changes how insert group style is done, or something else breaks, it will be a bad disaster all over the app. So we started to look how to make this in the list. And actually, online, I didn't find any solution about doing this with a list, but this is what we came up with. So on the right, you can see that we have a list with an empty section at the top, which matches the height of the header. And that, again, is used to track how much you scrolled. Again, something that I think Apple should provide you in a much easier way. And the problem with that is that it doesn't work like we did in the scroll view, where we just used right here. So you see color clear preference, and then we just look at the preference, and that's it. You have to use anchor preference, which is something not documented at all. Basically, you look at the some of the anchor of the view, so top, bottom, origin, whatever, and you propagate that. List doesn't understand any kind of coordinate space. It only understands this anchor preference, and that's it. If you use an approach with coordinate space, how we used for scroll view, your header will just scroll away and never come back. And this is what we sort of use right now for newer features that are not that important. But the thing with it is that there are still a lot of problems. So since, as I mentioned, there is no readable guide for SwiftUI, we have to restrict the list itself to the readable size. And that means that the scroll indicators are in the middle of the screen. So it's very ugly. We remove them for now. It's not good. Then changing the background of the list is a feature of iOS 16, which, again, doesn't make any sense to me how it wasn't added right at the start. But basically what we need to do is to mess with the global appearance of UI table view to get it fixed, which is not great. Due to our setup with hosting controllers, we made it so that we only mess with UI table views in a hosting controller, so only SwiftUI views are affected, but still it's not a great experience. Then there are quite a few hacks in place for different list styles, because for a group style, for example, insert group style, you need to make sure that your top section doesn't have a header, for example, because it will take extra space. For a plain style, there are different things. Not a good quality of code there. And also, Apple just decides to change something once in a while, and with iOS 16, they migrated list to UI collection view, which broke the thing entirely. It was an easy fix, but not a good time still. And also, we can't adjust separator colors and inset, because that's also a luxury feature of iOS 16, which for some reason wasn't added at the beginning. And the last point, which I added last night, if you know Apollo, it's a Reddit client. It's very good. Its developer, we contacted on Reddit somehow, and he directed me to his tweet, which shows how animations in SwiftUI actually don't run at 120 Hz as advertised, as opposed to UIKit, which again makes no sense. And as I read through this thread, it turns out that it works on an iPad with 120 Hz screen. So it's just Apple completely screwed up here. And that basically, that and this face of Tim Cook basically sums up my experience with SwiftUI. It's very great when it works, but when it doesn't, there is almost never a good solution online, sometimes no solution at all, and you just sit like this and why did I start this? Yeah, so thanks for your attention. If you have any questions, please direct them to me. That's it. I will get some water.
Thanks, Maksym, for the wonderful presentation. I'll use my role as a moderator to ask you the first question, which is, if you had a choice to go through that again, would you still use SwiftUI?
Yes, because now that we've done all of that garbage, now we can use common components which make new features easier to build. But still, I feel like UIKit gives you way more control, and it's developed. And it makes me very angry when I see people online like, oh, UIKit is deprecated, you shouldn't use that, SwiftUI is the future. Like, yeah, it's the future, but it's a future that hasn't arrived quite yet.
Thanks. By the way, if you are on the stream, you can ask the question via the Slido. And if you are in here, just raise your hands. So, anyone?
Hi. You've mentioned iOS 16 features.
Yes.
Can you target iOS 16 in George? The reason why I'm asking is, as far as I know, the Czech version of George is targeting iOS 14.
Every version of George is targeting iOS 14. And no, unfortunately, we cannot target iOS 16, mainly because it's the version that cut off a bunch of iPhones. So like your iPhone 7, iPhone 6s, very popular devices. So I think we can cut off iOS 14 at some point, but iOS 15 will be stuck with us for a long time because of those devices that people still want to use.
More questions? Anyone?
So we have exactly the same experience with SwiftUI and iOS 16. I would like to ask you if you had issues with our. Firstly, do you use async images inside lists?
No, not yet.
Okay,
not yet.
so you don't have that issue yet. But I can explain it. There's an issue when you use async image at some level deep in the SwiftUI hierarchy. Basically, it doesn't work on iOS 16, and there's no fix yet. So I would like to know if anyone knows how to fix it. So
I
One question, but did you use the iOS native async image?
it doesn't work with async image, Kingfisher, nor a Nuke library. Basically, they screwed up the life cycle of lists, and they over-optimized something deep inside, and on appear isn't called every time. So basically, if you recycle views, it doesn't call on appear, then images don't load, and it's an issue in iOS 16.
If I were to guess, it's probably connected with the fact that they changed list to be a collection view and screwed up something in the process.
We would like to use lists in our app, but this issue prevents us from doing so. And we use lazy VStacks inside scroll views, but then we have huge performance issues, even though it should work just fine. I would say iOS 14 is better in this way because it doesn't have performance issues for lazy VStacks inside scroll views, but iOS 16 is just garbage. So.
I would say that iOS 16 is kind of a disappointing release for me personally because like they screwed up some fundamental things like AV player view controller doesn't have a play button anymore on iOS 16. Just like it doesn't have it for whatever reason. It's a very weird bug, and yeah, it seems like a rushed release, and they focused too much on the load screen.
Yeah, but at least we know we are not alone in this. Thanks.
Yeah, I thought that I would be butchered here for talking smack about SwiftUI, but I'm not. So, thank you.
Okay, more questions? Yeah, two things. First, we're using asynchronous images in lists in a new feature, and I don't know about any problem yet. So I'm very looking forward to that. And second, you said that the previews didn't work in iOS 14.
They didn't work on Xcode 13.
Do they already work? Asking for a friend?
Yes.
Okay, we need to talk tomorrow.
Yeah, okay.
Thanks. More questions? Anyone? I don't see any questions on stream, so If that's it, then thank you very much, Maksym.
Thank you.
We'll have a short 10-minute break, so get refreshed, get something to eat, get a beer, and we'll have another presentation in 10 minutes. Also, there is, I believe there is a QR code with a quiz about iOS, so if you think you know stuff, then try to test your knowledge, and you can take some nice prizes below the QR code. Yeah. Hey everyone, hey everyone, hey everyone. Hey everyone. Can I have your attention once again? If you would take your seats and calm a bit down, we'll have another speaker here. So if you could just chill a bit, get to your places, get to your seats. And we will start. So the next speaker will be talking about something familiar, which is SwiftUI again, and it will be Roman from Erste, and Roman is an iOS developer, and if you would like to know something interesting about Roman, he has a cat. And his cat knows tricks. So you can ask about that later. Roman, stage is yours.
Thank you very much. So can you hear me good, right? 1, 2, 3. Great. Okay. So, as you know, as you have heard, George started as an Objective-C project, and right now it has almost no Objective-C code, but it is still full of UIKit. And when 1 year ago we decided to introduce SwiftUI and start implementing new features in SwiftUI, we thought of an approach how to do it gradually, how to do it accurately. And we hit a few walls. Obviously, you heard that, and we are still hitting them. But there was one major wall we wanted to know how to come around, how to work with it. And today we'll be talking about this. And first of all, could you please raise your hand if you used SwiftUI already? And who of you used SwiftUI in a UIKit project? Good, that's good. That's good because you're all familiar with this pain. So, there was a biggest issue, and for us it was nothing else as navigation. So navigation to be honest, it's not just navigation, it's navigation pre-iOS 16. In iOS 16 we have a navigation stack, we have a bunch of new things to work with, but before that we just had navigation view, which worked awfully. We had navigation links, and basically that was, and we had booleans which could trigger sheets, right? And basically this was it. So why is it bad? It is unstable and unreliable. It is too coupled with Vue. It has various limitations. So in my practice, there were times when I pushed some Vue or presented some Vue, and suddenly it just got dismissed, just like this, because of some bug, because I somewhere put some boolean which is completely unrelated. So this happens. Also coupled with Vue is about every navigation flow being too much into, every view being too much into navigation. So every view knew about how to navigate, where to navigate, what is it about, and all kind of flows in this regard. And basically, what we got with time is MVC, where M stands for massive. And there are various limitations. For us, it was one of the main issues was that we couldn't make a colorful navigation bar, and in George there are a bunch of colorful navigation bars. Ironically, after we introduced this approach, we said no to colors in navigation bars, so now we don't have it anymore in new features. But still, it was a nice journey, and I want to share it with you. So, and what is the solution and how we could do stuff? Solution is good old UIKit. Yeah. Thank you. Cool. So, yeah, as controversial as it might be, UIKit is a good source because it is stable, it is reliable. We know almost everyone knows how it works. Only maybe new developers who just joined iOS community start with SwiftUI and don't know anything about UIKit. But basically, it's something familiar to us, right? So let's try something. This talk will be kind of a workshop. I will code a bit. I will talk a bit. So let's code a bit right now. I will close this, and I will mirror my screen. So here is some project. You see I already imported SwiftUI and UIKit, two best friends, and you probably don't see it too good. Is it good? Cool. So let's start with three simple views. Yeah, like this. So we have first view, second view, third view, and first view will be the first view which will push the second view. This is my ideas, right? We will do it later. And the second view will present the third view, and third view will just say hello world. So simple, easy peasy, right? What you would do in SwiftUI is just, let's say, in the first you will introduce navigation view, and then inside navigation view, instead of button, you will probably have navigation link, which will say push, and blah, 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 blah. This is not what we're going to do now. Now we're going to do something slightly different. Let's put it back here, and let's switch to our presentation for a while. So, again, solution is UIKit. Our problem is that one of the main problems is that we want to have some single source of truth, some state of the flow in a centralized place where we can manage it very well, not like coupled in every view bit by bit, and then you have to find it and stuff. So what is the main approach in UIKit world to do such stuff with navigation? Of course, it is a coordinator. Have you worked with coordinator? Okay, so quickly. Coordinator is an abstraction which works with navigation, which presents some views, and coordinator knows about how to present views, when to present them, what to do with them, how to dismiss them, when to dismiss, and so on and so on. And views don't know anything about it, so they know that they have to report something like, I don't know, button pressed or whatever it is, but basically coordinator is responsible for that. But in our case, it is a bit different. So usually, view is a UI view controller. But what is view in our case? A view in our case is a SwiftUI view. How do we make it work with coordinator, which is UIKit in this case? So it's quite easy. We embed it in UI hosting controller. So our new friend since SwiftUI 1. Yeah, so let's jump to it and see how it works with it. And then we'll go further. So I'll do this. I'll show my screen. So here we go. We want to have a coordinator. In our case, yeah, there are two different cases, at least of which we talk a lot. There are two main cases. So we can have a class coordinator, which is a UI navigation controller, or we can have just a normal class, which is not a UI navigation controller, which handles some navigation controller that is passed from above, from another view. So let's make some init here, and let's call super init, and here is name nil, nil, bundle nil, right? So what we want to do here, let's start with presenting the first view. So first, to present the first view, let's do this. Okay, to present the first view, we first need to understand how to put it inside a hosting controller. We can do it easy with a native approach, but we'll do a bit advanced thing. Not that much advanced, but still, we'll create our own host controller. So let's say we have a class, which is hosting controller, and it will have some generic content, which will be view, and it will be inheriting UI hosting controller, and I think I have to put content here too, right? And we will have some init where we basically pass our view. So it will be a view builder to make it nice. It will be called content, and it will be a closure returning, content. It will be a closure returning our content, which is a generic overview. So basically we return a view here. We want to call super.init with root view content. And we also want this required initializer, of course. Thank you. Works? Yeah. So now we want to embed one into another. So what we do is we say let VC, stands for view controller, equals hosting controller, and we will pass here our first view. Let's run it. Build succeeded. Ta-da! Okay, that's weird. Let's see. Hosting controller was here. Super. What did I do wrong? Why is it black? That's true, exactly. I have to use this view controller. So what I do is I say set view controllers, and I say I want to use this view controller. I don't want it to be animated. It's the first one. Ta-da! We have our SwiftUI view inside a UIKit hosting controller, inside a UIKit navigation. So right now, if I press, nothing happens because we didn't implement anything. But yeah, if you want to implement something, we can go further, and let's say, where is it? Let's say we have our first view, and we want to push the second view, right? We don't do it right now with navigation view, which is SwiftUI thing. What we do is we need to tell our coordinator that please push it. So we say, okay, there will be a function which is called push. It will be void to void, and we will use it here, right? Action push. And now we have to provide this function. So we will have this function here. Let's say func push. And yeah, and here we do basically the same. We take the same code, we put it here, but instead of first, we say second view, like this. And we want to push view controller. Because our coordinator is UI navigation controller, we can just use this function on self, which is what we are going to do. We are going to animate it this time. And let's run. It's failed. Right, of course, because I haven't provided it. So what I can do is I can say self that push, like this. Build succeeded. Okay, we have our first view. We are familiar with it. We push the second view. Cool. With the same manner, we can do, with the very same manner, basically, we can do this. The other thing, we can func present, and it will call the third view like this. Third view. And we are going to present it too, like this. And now we want also second view to know that something should happen when we press present. So let present is a function void, like this. And we'll put this action here. So present. And present, actually. And here we say present. I think we have to use self. Right. So again, we can push, we can present. Right. Okay, so we need to present it. Present, you can, like this, right? Push, present, ta-da, good. So let's come back to our presentation. And. So there is a navigation controller we just saw, and we just saw how to work with it in coordinator and stuff. But there is a problem. By the way, it is not completely off the coordinator because it can be part of it. But here is the question. If you want to change something, let's say you want to change navigation title, or you want to change navigation buttons, or you want to change navigation color, or you want to change whatever it is on the navigation bar. How can you do it and from where? Well, apparently you can do it from everywhere. You can do it from coordinator, you can do it from hosting controller, you can do it from SwiftUI view. And this was another thing that we didn't like too much, because basically you again have a decentralized realm of different changes, and God knows why you put something here, then something here, then something here, and try to find out why the bug is happening. So let's create something interesting here, and let's create another abstraction. Who doesn't like abstractions, right? We will create something which is called navigation propagation. This is an object which we'll be using to ask, which we will ask to propagate some changes we want to navigation controller, or navigation, yeah, change navigation bar in this regard. So what we are going to do is we want to be able to ask our navigation propagation for some changes from, let's say, coordinator, from, let's say, SwiftUI view, and navigation propagation itself will already propagate these changes to hosting controller, which is kind of a view controller, and view controller can have like self navigation controller blah blah blah, or self title equals blah blah blah. So it will propagate everything to navigation controller. And let's check how it might work. Let's close this, go back to code, like this. Okay, so are you okay if I make it a bit smaller, like this? Yeah, cool. So let's create some class which will be navigation propagation, and it will be just a normal class. Let's add some initializer for it. So what we want here is we want this class to be able to accept these changes and then propagate it further to the navigation controller. And we want always also to handle some, to not handle, but to store some current state. So we want to know what is right now, and we want to accept new changes. There is a cool thing called subject in Combine. So subject is it is current value subject. It's not only subject, but it's current value subject. So current value subject in Combine holds current value, but you can send new values to it, and it will do whatever you want with it. So let's create one, and for the sake of simplicity, we'll create one for only screen title, but the same can work with everything you might need there. So let's say screen title subject will be current value subject over string, and failure is never. We don't want to fail. And we want to initialize it maybe sometimes with some title already, maybe not. Maybe you want, for example, in our Stripe view, there is no title, but when you scroll, the title appears. So there are different cases, but let's say we want some title, we might want some title, and it will be again string, which is new. And self, of course, yeah, equals current value subject, and we will say title, like this. So now we have a mechanism to store and to ask for new changes. Now we need somehow to propagate them to navigation controller. So as I showed on the presentation, we can do it through a hosting controller. Where is it? Here is it. We can do it through the hosting controller because hosting controller is a part of navigation controller, and it can propagate everything up. So what we are going to do here is we are going to pass it here, navigation. Oops, navigation propagation, which is of type navigation propagation, and let's have some default value. Sometimes you don't want anything there, and also this default value is basically a really default because it has no title in it when you initialize it, or whatever you want here, you can put defaults there. And what we want here is we want to take this navigation propagation. We can do it everything in initializer, it's quite convenient. We want to take its subject or subjects later, and we want to subscribe to it. We want to receive some values, and it will be a new title. And we say self.title equals new title. Don't punch me, I will edit right now, just in case. Okay, good. And we also need to store this cancelable somewhere. Let's create var subscriptions is a set over any cancelable. Cool. And now we can store it here. Store in subscriptions. Cool. So what we have now? We have now a mechanism to store, to suggest new changes or to send new changes and to apply them. So basically, if you will have anything more than just a title, you can have, I don't know, leading navigation bar items down here in this very same manner. Also can subscribe to subject via sync and change everything you want here. Yeah, so now the only thing we need is just to use this navigation propagation. What is convenient about it is that you basically still can use it from different places, but it centralizes all the changes in one place and creates like a single pipe to connect to navigation controller. So what we can do, let's say we want our second view to have to be able to change title. We can create a nav prop, which will be navigation propagation. Let's say it won't have any title right away, and I want, in this case, I want view to change it. So my view should know about it. So let's pass it inside. Let's say here will be a navigation propagation. And let's say there will be a vstack. And inside, I want another button, which will be called change title. Like this. And we will say navigation propagation, subject send. Yeah, let's do this. String. Random element. Yeah, random element returns us a character. We put it into string. We put it into our subject. We get a title. Yeah, the same. You can optimize it if you don't want. If you want to encapsulate some technical details, you want to optimize it. You can just create for every subject these closures. You can just call closures like update title. So you don't send something to a subject and don't scare other developers. Yeah, basically that's it. Let's try it out. So if I run it, it's failed. Okay, it's failed because I don't pass it, of course. So we have navigation propagation, and we pass nav prop here. All right? Have we missed? I think we haven't missed anything. So it succeeded. So let's push. Now we have two buttons. And if we, I missed something. Of course. What have I missed? So navigation propagation. Of course. I pass it to my view, but my hosting control doesn't know about it. That's right. So we can put it here too. Navigation propagation. We pass basically the same thing. So now this navigation propagation is shared there. Now our hosting control knows about it. Now our SwiftUI view knows about it. If we tap our change title, we see title changes to something very fancy. And basically in the very same manner, you can, again, change whatever you want with the navigation. You just need to add more subject, basically. OK, that's good. Let's go further. So, let's run it. Good. OK, we saw this, and we saw this. So, raise your hand if you're using MVVM or MVVM-C with coordinator. Good. So, I have good news for you. Basically, the very same principle will work with view model, which communicates to SwiftUI view. So in our case, for example, I updated the title right from SwiftUI view. This is not what we want using MVVM. We want to make it from view model. So we can just do the same from the view model. You create a view model. I won't show it, but basically, principle is the same. You create a view model. You pass navigation propagation there. You change whatever you want there, depending on whatever things happen, like something comes from the internet, from the server, or some button has tapped, or whatever it is. Maybe some notification has come. And basically, you update navigation propagation. It, again, goes here, and your navigation controller is updated. Yeah, so it looks good, but there are some pros as well as cons. So let's see them. We solved the navigation problem with it not being abstracted away and being too much coupled with views. It is stable now because it's UIKit. We just have our SwiftUI views inside this UIKit. And it's independent and coupled quite the same with the first one, but a bit different. And there are cons which I want to talk about a bit. So there is no, you cannot basically use SwiftUI environment object because it works only with the SwiftUI hierarchy. And if we have UIKit hierarchy, we can basically use it. But we were talking about it because it's a bummer, because it's a nice feature to have, but we agreed that it's not safe and its compiler cannot help. So if you forget to add an environment object, you will see it only in production, or if you test good enough, you will see it when you already run the app. So a compiler will not tell you anything. Basically, it's very easily replaceable with normal dependency injection. The same thing, you just pass it inside the initializer. And also, I talked to some Apple developers, Apple engineers, and they said that as a rule of thumb, we shouldn't use environment objects. We should use normal dependency injection. So environment object should be used like if you really see it's a really, really good opportunity. Let's say you have multiple views, that have a hierarchy and they depend on one view model. Maybe that's a good use for using navigation environment object. And also, yeah, less fancy SwiftUI and more grumpy UIKit. You cannot, well, you can, but again, it will break. It won't break, but it will. You can misuse the toolbars, for example, or navigation title modifiers in SwiftUI, because basically you kind of agree of using this one navigation propagation, which is the central place, and you can catch all kinds of bugs in there, and not let them scatter all over the project. And also, yeah, there is still a long way of going 100% on SwiftUI. So that being said, I say thank you for watching, and thank you very much. And by this QR code, you can find my gist and see the whole code if you need it.
Thanks a lot for the wonderful presentation.
Thank you.
And please allow me the first question, which is: so is using Swift in UIKit something like using SwiftUI in UIKit something like using Swift in Objective-C?
No, for two reasons. First reason, I never used Swift in Objective-C. I'm too young for that. Second reason is second thing is that the more I use SwiftUI, the more I see that SwiftUI is a lot about how view is presented, how view is rendered, so to say. But it's less about the data which is needed for showing this view. And the more I develop in SwiftUI, the more I see that this conjunction of SwiftUI and UIKit is actually not a bad thing. It's actually a right thing to do. It's not something you should avoid. It's something that could help you build great apps, and there is nothing wrong with it. And also Apple makes some efforts to help us with that. They have UI hosting controller, how it's called, UI view representable, and all kind of stuff that helps with it. It doesn't work too good, but the direction is clear.
Thanks. So do we have any questions in the room? Nothing.
Cool.
First call, second call. I'll look into the Slido. Nothing on the Slido so far. Okay.
So do you use this approach actually in
Yes,
George?
Yes, we use it in George, and for the last year, we started in October, November, and I personally built a flow with kind of 20 screens or so with this approach, yes.
Mm-hmm. And do you have it like in a form of some library or framework?
No, we just have our, because Maksym told our app is modularized, we have a module which is called George API. We put all kind of API stuff there, which is core, and we can use it everywhere in our place. So basically you saw it's like 100 lines of code, and 100 lines of code with those three views. So it's not a lot to handle, so we don't modularize that. But if it grows, yeah, why not?
Okay, thank you. Any more questions? Right.
Hello, I want to ask, did you try this approach also to another Apple targets, for example, Apple Watch?
No, honestly not. We have only iOS and iPadOS, and it works for them good. But we haven't tried it with, and I also personally have never tried it with any other target.
So, and do you think it will be possible?
I think the principle might stay the same. Maybe this exactly might not be possible or working too good, but the principle stays the same. It's not a problem to use SwiftUI and UIKit in conjunction, or AppKit in conjunction. And there are a lot of things that are absent in SwiftUI. It's obvious we can and should use previous technologies at least for another 5 years maybe.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Hi. So you mentioned that on iOS 16 there were improvements on this. I haven't looked into details, but do they now solve all of our problems?
No. Next one. So no, I think we'll stick with this approach even when we drop iOS 14 and 15. But I think navigation stack in iOS 16 is much better and more reliable, and it has cool things, cool features, and also this new way of pushing the screens, and it's kind of centralized. You can have it as a modifier. It is good. I'm not sure how stable it is. I mean, it's more stable than previous, the navigation view, because I haven't got any problems yet. But also I haven't tested it in, for example, George with 8 million users, or with some extensive, I don't know, features, right? And still, it solves half of the problems, but the other half is not yet there. And of course, now you can have better deep linking, you can have your navigation path stored somewhere, but it's not everything we wanted. And also, yeah, this is really stable. And when I use SwiftUI, it's not always, I don't always have the feeling that everything is good. No, I often have feeling that I'm on fire and I have to do something because it might break. And with this coordinator and UIKit approach, I feel pretty safe. So yeah, I think I would wait another few years and see maybe there are more improvements to it.
Thank you.
Thanks. More questions? Anyone? There are no questions on the stream, so in that case, thank you very much, Roman, for the presentation. Let's have another 10-minute break, and afterwards there will be a nice presentation by Daniel from Erste. This time not about SwiftUI, so stay tuned. Sorry. If you would mind to find your places again, calm a bit down, and give some silence to Daniel from Erste, who will be talking about KYC and what's hidden behind this acronym. And if you want to know something interesting about Daniel, he has thousands of hours of Mario Kart, so don't challenge him to that. And it seems that you are starting to be a bit silent. So, Daniel, the stage is yours.
So, hello, my name is Daniel. I'm, like my colleagues, an iOS developer for George. And I don't see my screen yet. Yeah, so here it is. Yes, my talk will be a little bit less technical than the talks before, so you can rest your head a little bit after 2-3 beers. Let's start. I would like to talk about things that we all hate. Things like mosquitoes. Nobody likes them, I think. Or losing your socks in the washing machine. One of the great mysteries of mankind. And the third thing is having to go to a bank in person if you want to create a bank account just to sign some documents and yeah, show your ID. We from George, we would like to make the world a little bit better. We cannot do anything against mosquitoes. Our technology is not advanced enough to solve the washing machine problem, but we can try it with the bank thing, mainly because we are a bank. So yeah, we tried it. And that brings me to my actual talk, which is about Know Your Customer, or short KYC. Know Your Customer is a set of guidelines in the finance industry to identify your business partner. In our case, our business partner is the customer who wants to open a bank account, who is applying for a loan, who wants to have a credit card, things like that. And of course, we need to know who this person is before giving him a bank account or something else. And there are some approaches to do this. We have the traditional approach. You're going to the bank and you're getting identified there in person. Yeah, this is the thing we hate. We don't want to do that anymore. So there are some other solutions. Video chat became popular during the COVID lockdowns. You don't have to go to the bank anymore. You're just chatting with some bank guy. Yeah, but still, the bank has to employ some person who is sitting on the other side of the phone the whole day and onboard customers. There's a better solution, which is the fully automated approach. Fully automated for the bank, of course. The customer still has to do a couple of things. But they don't have to go to the bank anymore. They don't have to talk to anybody. They're just downloading the app, making a picture of themselves, making a picture of their ID, uploading everything, and 2 minutes later they have access to the George app. So, of course, there are some challenges to this because we want to do it securely. We need to detect fake IDs. We need to find out if the person is real. You know, nowadays everybody can go to this thing called internet and generate some fake images. And we also want to know if the person really is who they claim to be. Because people lose their passports, they forget them in their planes, in this small pocket in front of your seat, and somebody else is taking them, saying, that's a great opportunity to get a new credit card. Yeah, that's not what we want. Yeah, and I want to show you now how we are doing it. So, and like in every good cooking show on TV, I prepared something. I was already going through the onboarding by myself, so we can watch it now. I think now most of the thing is visible. Yeah, good. So there are 4 steps. We will go through these 4 steps, and for every step I will explain you what's happening in the background, because here we just see the little thing that we want the customer to see. So at the beginning, the customer has to take a selfie. How does it work? Ah, that's the wrong button. I have to press on the button of the player, of course. It's so real, sorry. So how do I make this smaller? It doesn't get smaller. Okay. Let's just open it again. And now it's here, yeah. Now we have all the buttons that we need. Ah, and it's already starting, and it's already finished. The customer made a selfie of himself, and the picture is getting uploaded, and we are already the next step. So it looks simple, but there are a couple of things happening in the background. So you might have noticed there's no button to press to take the picture. Not like on the camera where you're selecting the button to make the picture of yourself. We are selecting the time when we want to take the picture. And this has a reason. We are not only taking that one picture that we are showing the customer, we are already taking a couple of pictures before. This one picture is the last one, and it's actually the least important one. during the adjustment time, when the customer adjusts his phone, we are taking a couple of pictures, we are comparing all of these pictures, and we are looking for things like face movements, eye movements, all the things which you would not have if you would just hold a printed photograph in front of the camera. And we are also collecting some information from the picture itself, which I will show you now. So I have here my postman, and I am sending the picture, and let's see what information we can already extract from the picture. We think is it readable? Yeah. We think the customer is male, and we think the customer is approximately 29 years old. So that information we got from the selfie. That's of course not enough to open a bank account, but it's something. So we need a couple of more steps. The next step is what we call active liveness. Here we want to check again if the customer is a real person. We are doing that by showing the customer this nice green dot, and they have to follow it with their eyes. And in the meantime, again, we are taking a couple of pictures and checking if the eye position on the picture corresponds to the position of the dot on the screen. Looks pretty secure, is actually less secure than the things which we checked already on the selfie, because here the customer knows what we're doing. It's quite obvious that we want to check his eye movements. So he can actually, if he knows when we are taking the picture, he can actually fake it, which is also something which I will show you now, because that's something that I have to do every day when I'm running the automated tests. So what I'm doing now, I'm sending all the selfies, and then I will show you what I actually sent. So we took now 4 pictures, and you see the picture is just some guy looking on the top left corner, or a guy looking at the bottom right corner, or top right corner. We have all the eye positions prepared, so we can easily pass this step also with our fake data. But that's okay, because we wouldn't have been able to pass the previous step with the passive liveness. And there's also something else which we are checking here. We are not only trying to check the liveness, we are also gathering new information. So where am I here? So here we didn't get anything new, but here we got something new. So as we know from before, the customer is male and approximately 29 years old. But now we also know if in the liveness check, does he look the same like in the selfie step? Because one common thing that some attackers try is to put the picture in front of the camera in the selfie step, and in the liveness check they're trying to passing it by themselves because they cannot do it with a picture. So we are checking this here, is it the same person? In this case, it's false. It's not the same person. We would already cancel the onboarding, which we are not doing now, of course, because I have 2 more steps to show you. Yeah, next step is now the ID. Of course, you need to show your ID if you want to have a bank account. That's also simple for the customer. He is taking a picture of the front side of his ID. He is taking a picture of the back side. And finished. Let's do this here too. You might think we are only collecting the pictures of the ID because there's some regulation that says we have to store the pictures, or we have to store the IDs of our customers. And yes, you're partly right, this regulation exists. But of course, we are also trying to get information from this. So let's have a look what information we got. And you see, it grew. We have much more stuff. Details are not interesting now. It's just all the stuff that you usually have on a ID card. Let me quickly go back to my presentation because I have a slide prepared for this. Yeah, I just took some random passport from the internet and would like to show you what information we're gathering. So we have here on the bottom highlighted the MRC. It's the machine readable zone that's on every European Union passport and on all personal ID cards of all European Union countries. It's specially created for being easily readable by a machine, and in our case the machine is our smartphone. It contains basic information. It contains your birth date, your nationality, your ID number, date of issue, stuff like that. And we are also taking this information from here. We are using OCR to read all of the stuff that is on the visual zone, and we are also taking the picture from here, and that's what we will check here now. So we gathered lots of nice information, and now we can do some cross checks. So as you saw before, we compared the liveness selfie to our selfie from the first step. Now we can also compare the photograph from the passport if this is the same person as on the selfie. We can do the same with the gender. We estimated from the selfie that the customer is male. Now we are checking. Does he also look male on his picture on the passport? Yes, he does. Does the passport say he is male in the visual zone? Is it written sex male? Yes, it is. And is he also male according to the MRC? Yes, he is. This might look redundant. Why are we comparing the visual zone with the machine readable zone? Because that has to be the same. The reason is just some attackers are not that bright and they are just faking their ID, but they don't understand this random string on the bottom and they're just using something. So we would already catch them here. Same we are doing with the age. We estimated he's 29. According to the photo of the passport, he's 2 years younger or older, which is not surprising because your passport photo is usually older than your selfie, your current selfie. And according to the birth date in the passport, he is 8 years older or younger. That looks like a big difference, 8 years, but it's still okay for us. I think for us up to 10 years is still okay. The reason is that the age estimation based on a photograph can never be that exact, and especially if the customer is wearing lots of makeup, he or she may appear a little bit younger than he actually is. But we would catch here cases like somebody's taking the ID of his father and trying to open a bank account in his father's name because he looks similar. So, some of you might think now, taking a picture of the ID, that's not very secure. How do we check all the security features that we have on our ID cards? How do we know if it's even a real ID card made from plastic or somebody just has a copy? Yeah, you're right. That's why I want to show you my fake Slovakian ID here. I'm not Slovak. My name is also not Michal, but that's my picture. This I use for testing. It's the ID of a colleague. I just photoshopped myself into the picture. And with this fake ID card, I can actually pass all the steps until the next one. And the next one is a very important one when it comes to security. So no, I have to go to the video, which is here. Because now we are checking the data stored on the NFC chip. So all European Union passports have an NFC chip, and the NFC chip contains all information visible on the passport. And this information is accessible to anybody who knows the key, and the key is written in your passport, because the key just is the passport number plus the birth date plus the date of issue. If you have this data, you can access the NFC chip of your passport. Of course, there's some other information which we cannot access, for example, your fingerprint. For this one, you need this special huge passport readers that you see on the airports, for example. Yeah, but all the visual stuff you can access. So let's have a look how it looks in the app. So nothing special here, we're just asking the customer to take his phone and put it on top of his passport, and yeah, all the information is read. It takes a while. So, and it's done. I would like to show you what kind of information you can get from there. So if you want to try it by yourself, you can just download this app from the App Store. It's first taking a picture of your passport to get all the information that you need for the key, and then you can access it. Yeah, what do we have? We have again the photo. We have all the basic information, name, nationality, gender, and so on. We have even the signature, and we have again the machine-readable zone there. And of course, we're using now all of these informations to do the same cross-checks that we did before. And especially, we want to cross-check the data which we gathered before from taking a photograph of the ID. Because now we can detect things like my fake ID. So here I was easily able to put my photo. It's not so easy to put your photo on the NFC chip in your passport. What you can do is you can buy a writable NFC chip, costs less than €1. You can copy some data on it. You can also put your photo on it. Could work maybe with some apps, but we are using passive authentication, which is a security feature of NFC, which basically means all the data which is stored on the NFC chip, the signature is created from it using a private key from which only the passport authorities have, and there's also the public key stored on the chip, and we're using this to verify the signature. And of course, if I would manage to put my photo on another passport, the signature would not match anymore. There's also another security feature of NFC to check if somebody is really using the NFC chip from the passport, or he's just using another NFC chip and copy the data on it. It's called active authentication. That works in a challenge response procedure. Basically, the NFC reader, in our case our phone, is sending a random number to the chip. The chip is signing it with a private key, which is stored in a non-readable part of the chip, and we can verify it again with the public key. However, this is something which not every country is implementing. That's not mandatory in the European Union. Some countries are doing it, others are not. Also, as far as I know, not every phone is able to do this, so the active authentication is something which we are not using, but we're using passive authentication since a couple of weeks, so you cannot break it anymore. I'm sorry. Good. Is this 100% secure? No, of course it's not. But that's not the point. We don't need to be 100% secure. We need to be as secure as the current procedure, which is going to the bank and showing your ID card to some bank guy. And this is fulfilled because the bank guy is not an expert in fake IDs. The bank guy is also not an expert in matching your face with your 10-year-old passport picture. And we all know nobody looks like in its passport. So we are quite certain that this is a reasonably secure method to onboard customers, and we are already doing it in some countries. We are doing it in Austria. We are doing it in Hungary soon. We are not doing it in Czech Republic yet, but it might come in the future. Yeah, that was my talk about KYC. Thank you for your attention, and if you have any question, yeah, please shoot them at me.
Thanks for the wonderful talk. Now it's time for questions, and I wouldn't be doing my job if I didn't ask question first, which is, when you have the enum for the genders, how many cases does it have?
I hope it's not a Boolean anymore. So I think we have enough cases, yeah.
Thanks. Any questions from the audience?
Oman had a question here.
So let's say a person got in a car crash and their face looks quite different from what's on the passport. In this case, they might need to go to the branch, or do they have some different procedure?
Yeah, if the face really looks that different that we cannot detect anymore, we are telling them go to the branch and show them your crashed face, and maybe the bank guy will identify you or get a new passport.
Okay, and second thing, let's say you have a twin. It's not secure neither here nor in the bank, right? It's just impossible to tell.
If you have a twin, yeah. If you have a twin, you could probably create an account in your twin brother's name, yeah. But you can do the same in the bank.
Yeah.
You can do the same in the airport. Yeah, that would work. Yeah.
Thank you.
Right.
Thanks. Hi, I would like to ask, are deepfakes a problem in first two steps, or it's somehow handled?
Are the fakes a problem?
Deepfakes.
Deepfakes.
Yeah.
So we are using an SDK which is provided by a company in Bratislava. They're called Innovatrix. They are telling us they can detect deepfakes with a very high probability. I didn't try it by myself, but they tell us that it should not be a problem.
Thanks. More questions?
iPhone camera settings have a setting called mirror the front camera. So if I turn that on, will it think that I am not alive anymore because I look in a different corner?
Yeah, you would be that person, yeah.
Thanks. Any more questions? I didn't see any on the stream. Yeah. So if there are no more questions, in that case, thank you very much, Daniel, for your wonderful talk about KYC.
Thank you very much.
And this was the last talk of the evening. However, the party's not over yet, so I encourage you to discuss things with speakers, discuss things with each other, and do some networking or whatever. There's quite a lot of beer left. There'll be pizza, I was told, and I think some group already mentioned that they will be going to the pub as soon as the beer is out. So, yeah, feel free to join them. So thank you very much for your attention today, and it was wonderful to have you, and I hope you will be here next time.